Women's ministry. What does it look like? How do you get things started? And how do you know how to help women in your church? If you've ever wondered about questions like these, today's podcast is for you. Welcome to Run with Horses. My name is Susan, and the goal of this podcast is to help you thrive as a follower of Jesus. The spiritual life is simple in many ways, but it's potentially the most difficult part of your life. God invites you to grow, to live intentionally, and to join in His mission. It's wonderful that we can do this together. Thank you for joining me today. If you're new here, you can check out past episodes at runwithhorses.net. Welcome to today's show. And first, before we begin, I need to introduce my guest, which is Chloe Smith, my daughter.
That is who I am, yes.
And we also need to explain why the B String is running this podcast today. But Norman is under the weather, and he didn't think he could make it through the one show without sniffling and sneezing, so he's called in the reinforcements. So
that's me.
Yeah. So Chloe's done with college for the year, and so she's agreed to join us on this show. So today I'd like to just talk about women's ministry. I mean, we came away from Japan a couple of years ago and joined a church. Well, not really joined, but have begun being a part of a church, local church here in Wisconsin. And I just want to share how God has worked through me, just viewing this new church that we're going to and to where I am today, if that makes any sense. So it's kind of like taking women's ministry from zero to something that's actually going forward. And it's not to say that this church didn't have any women's ministry, but just kind of my involvement in it. Mm-hmm. So first of all, and I think this can be related to like anywhere you go, like you first go to a church, or maybe you're already in a church, but this is good for missionaries as well, where you just go into a community. So say there's a church and you're going to it, you just take some time to look around and see what are the needs here, what women are here, what are their needs, where are they spiritually? And I think it took me maybe even a year before I figured out, where do I fit into this? And it just takes a little time to, see who you are in relation to them and see what might have a need. It's also good to see what is being done in the church, like what women's ministries are being done. And I think when I first started going there really wasn't anything. I mean, the women were involved in the church, helping with the social committee or, setting up or providing meals. But they just started thinking about having a Bible study for women. And I think they'd had some of those in the past, but had gotten away from it. So anyway, the church ladies said, okay, we're going to start a Bible study. So they figured out a day, Saturday, 9:00, and maybe twice a month they were thinking of doing it. And so then we had our first meeting, and there were like 9 ladies. I mean, we're in a rural part of Wisconsin, so it's not like there's tons of people in our church. But 9 ladies, we were like, yay, that's awesome. And the next week, or the next time we met, we had like 4 ladies who showed up. So, but during the first one, we realized, oh, well, this one and this one, they cannot meet on Saturdays. But the rest of the ladies, that was the best time because there were people working, and so it just didn't work out. So I just I was paying attention and thought, those 2 ladies just can't make it, so they're out of luck, I guess. And maybe it's from coming from a missionary background, but you think you want to reach the people that are interested and that are available. So that helped me to say, you know what, I could probably meet with these people at a different time, and I could just take the same material. We were going through a book on Ephesians and working through that with a ladies' Bible study. And so maybe I could meet with these 2. So I set it up or talked to them, and they said, sure, that would be great. Let's meet on a Tuesday morning. And so we did the same thing, maybe twice a month. But we went slower. The church ladies group, they went through 2 lessons at a time, boom, 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 and they were done within however many months. But the other ones are a little bit older clientele. And they said, let's go one chapter at a time, one lesson at a time. So then it took, I think it was a year before we got through all that. But we could go at a slower pace. There was another lady who came, and when we were still planning this first Bible study, she was like, oh, I've always longed to be in a Bible study for women. And she's like, but this time doesn't work, and that time doesn't work. So I was like, well, okay. And this lady wasn't really attached to our church very much. So like, well, I'll meet you whenever I can. And thankfully, I have the liberty to have freedom of scheduling. Not everybody has that. But so we set up, and I met her at her house. Probably, I don't know, I think it was 5:00 at night. And we had a great first meeting. I think it lasted 2 or 3 hours. She just had lots of questions, and it was awesome. And I think we only ended up meeting twice, maybe 3 times. And then her schedule was too crazy, and maybe she didn't, I don't know. For whatever reason, that one just fizzled. But I was able to provide something for her if she wanted it. So that's kind of what I do. I guess what I started out with doing is just seeing what are the needs, and that opportunity just kind of popped up, and to see, all right, these people aren't being serviced or met. How can I fill that?
So basically what you're saying is the key point to looking for any sort of ministry is that you have to be looking for it. If you weren't looking and you're just like, oh, well, the church offers this, so that's the only thing I'm going to do, then nothing ever will happen. But you have to be specifically looking for opportunities where there are people whose needs are not being met and where you can step in and help with that.
Yeah. And I think partly I've done Bible studies before, so I was sort of comfortable with that. So obviously if a person's not comfortable doing something, then either they have to learn how to do it and like gulp and go, or else, they might see things from a different angle. And that's true because, different people will notice different needs. Like I'm sure somebody else would look at this same thing and not think about, hey, somebody has a need. But if they notice something else in the church, they are going to jump at that, and I won't notice that. So God uses all of our gifting and our talents, and I love that. One thing I noticed, like the church ladies, and now we had this other group that was meeting at somebody's home, I noticed too that none of the young ladies in our church joined either of these Bible studies. And I thought, nobody's doing anything with them. I wonder why they didn't join with the older ladies. And maybe it's because the age gap, or maybe they didn't like the subject matter. I didn't know. And then I noticed a few needs, or, I'd like to reach out to some of them. And so that was like the biggest leap of faith for me, because I wanted to do sort of like a discipleship kind of group with them, but to ask them was like so hard for me. I think I always expect people to say no, and maybe I'm too cynical, or just think, I guess it's a lack of faith to think that God is not working in anybody, and of course they're not going to want to meet with me, and maybe it's the age gap thing too, or so anyway, I prayed about it a lot, and I started talking. There were only 5 or 6 of them, and I just went to each one and said, hey, would you be interested in meeting for a discipleship accountability? Just meet with me like once a month or twice a month or whatever. And I think of the 6, 5 said yes. So I was like, wow, what do you know? And I think the hardest thing was picking a day and a time. I was so stressed out by that for some reason. But once it got started, then it's just easy. You just say, okay, when's our next meeting? And we just kind of planned it, month by month. But boy, just getting it to the place where, okay, I have to ask, do you want to do this? And when can we do it? And everybody has all these schedules, and it was challenging. So we ended up doing it on Sundays after church, or else right before one of the services. So that's when it worked out for them. But there's a lot of good feedback and things that came out of these like the older ladies that we were the split off of the first ladies' Bible study, I think at least one of the ladies just was really learning from that. And now that that ministry has come to, or that study came to a close, she wants to keep up this ministry. And it was kind of cool because, like, she invited other people, like in her neighborhood, some people that don't even go to our church. And so that group sort of grew from 2 ladies to 4 or 5. But then I was like, okay, well, I'm done because that's a lot of Bible studies to be running around to. And so, but she was like, I really want to do it. But she didn't feel like she's a teacher. So I said, well, how about this? And I gave her one option. And then Norman has just started these Discovery Bible studies, or one in our town. And he's been trying to introduce that to other people and train people to be able to have those. And so I told this lady, hey, we're going to be having some training. Would you be interested to come? And I was thinking, oh, she doesn't want to do that. There's my cynicism again. But then she was like, yes, I really want to do that. So awesome. So she's going to join that. And hopefully she can start leading that in her own home. So that was kind of a wonderful side benefit to that. Our first ladies' Bible study that went with the church there, it finished quicker than the other one. And then I was asked, would you lead the next one? So I'm like, okay, that's fun. And I didn't pick a book of the Bible, but I did one that was just a book that somebody else had written. And it helps people think through like how we relate to God. It's very practical and maybe thought-provoking. And we met in somebody's home. It was a smaller group, but it was a really good group, and I think it met a need in those people that were attending, and it was really good. So that's that. Just to explain my system, like when we have a book that we're reading through, this one had like 9 chapters, just kind of a Christian author kind of deal. And it might have a few questions at the end, but what I would do is like everybody would just come having read 1 chapter at a time, and then we'd discuss it. So I didn't spend hours preparing or trying to figure out what am I going to teach. It wasn't like that. I was just the facilitator, and I would read the stuff, and sometimes I'd think, oh, this would be a good question to ask them, and not even from the book, but just, hey, do you agree with this? Or what do you think? How does this work out in your life? Or do you see this in the world around you? And those kind of things. It's just very simple, and then asking prayer requests and praises, and it helps you to get to know people. And some of the feedback I got from that and the young ladies, one that I did, was that, hey, we've been going to church with each other for a long time, but we've really started getting to know each other better. And as you get to know them, you start caring more about them, and you hear what their needs are. And one of the best things I think that came out of that, all of these studies, was that, like, before and after church, it's not so much chit-chat like, oh, what did you do last weekend? Or what are you going to do next week? But it was like, hey, how'd that go with, you were going to reach out to that person at work? Or, hey, I know you said you were really nervous about this big exam. How did that go? And, or, just different and more deep discussions, and even spiritual things like, I've been struggling with anxiety, and how did you help me? Or how'd you get through that? So those things, it helped to deepen our relationships. Also, we started a texting group text thing so that we could, yes, you're laughing at me. So we could share our prayer requests and, things like that. So that has helped keep us more in tune. With the young ladies group, I know I'm talking a lot here. One thing that, like, we also went through a book study because of one of the girls had said, I'm kind of struggling with this topic. So then we got a book that addressed that and worked through it biblically, just, overall. Anyway, so what I liked about that is the same kind of idea where you take one chapter, you read it separately, and then when you come together, you just discuss what did you hear, what did you like, what really stuck out to you. And one thing that I thought was really helpful is that, especially for the younger ladies, is to be able to help them to share the things that they read and learned and be able to vocalize those topics. I know your dad, Norman, helped you kids do that as you were growing up. Like around the supper table, he would recommend a book, and maybe each one of you kids had a different book. And then on a specific night, they'd say, "Okay, Chloe, what did you learn from your book this week?" And do you want to talk about that a little?
Yeah, I mean, we would each have a book, and we learned pretty quickly that we needed to highlight things in the book and actually learn something from it, because he was going to ask us specifically. So what was your takeaway from this week's chapter? So it just made us go through the material a little bit more carefully, and actually go, okay, this was really good. I need to remember this main idea from the chapter, and to also practice sharing that with other people, I think was helpful.
Mm-hmm. And maybe, I know he also taught about the Bible journaling, which, you have your one thought and your takeaway from whatever verse you read in a specific day. And then that also was kind of helping to share, because one of the things that he likes to do is share what was your journaling. We did that at our Sunday evening services. And I think that too was helpful to just be able to share, okay, this is what I read, this is what I got out of it, and this is how I want to vocalize that to you.
Right. I think a lot of times when people learn something, maybe they'll highlight it or they'll write it down somewhere, and then it just kind of stays in a notebook and it never comes out. Mm-hmm. And then it's easier for you to forget about it that way too. But if you're thinking about, this was really helpful for me, I wonder who I can share this with, then it keeps you thinking about it longer, and then might also bless someone else. So I think it's a really helpful thing to practice.
And I'm just remembering as I'm listening to you how even small children can do this. Like, I just remember your first time to ever give a devotional was when we had all the college kids in Japan during a summer internship type thing. And how old do you think you were when you started that?
I think I did my first one.
Was that 2000?
2006? Do we have Grit in 2006?
Yeah.
Maybe that one or the next one. It was one of the first years, because I'd heard everybody else doing devotionals. So I was like, I can do that. So, yeah, I remember vaguely.
So that'd be like 7, maybe around 7. I think it was like 5 minutes long, but you just read a verse and you said a few sentences.
Or less than 5 minutes, like 30 seconds.
Well, you were very, serious. But I think that really inspired other people, because, college kids are not always feel, confident to share a devotional. You are one now. But, so then for them to see a 7-year-old say, hey, I want to do this, I can do this. And it must have given them a lot of encouragement to say, okay, well, if she can do it, I can do it.
Yeah.
So, that's a good skill to have, to take a Bible verse and be able to share even 5 minutes about it. So I was saying all of these things, like these different Bible studies and stuff. I love doing that. So that's my specific mission or purpose or ministry, I guess. And not all of us in women's ministry are going to look the same. And I love that aspect of it, because I don't know if you would like to do Bible studies. I mean, maybe you haven't done a lot of that. I certainly hadn't at your age, but we're all going to have different passions, different things that we feel strongly about, that, hey, this is a need in the church. And I love when people will come to the pastor and say, hey, something needs to be done about the singles in the church, or something needs to be done. Then you say, great, if you see the need, then jump right in and start something. And a lot of people are like, well, not me. But I mean, if you're the one who sees the need, then you should be the one to help fill that need, because that's your heartbeat. And I think God gives us those passions and those desires, and even the foresight to be able to see that there's a lack or a gap in the church. So now all these Bible studies I've been having 3 on a regular basis, they've kind of naturally come to a close all around the same time. And I was kind of thinking, oh, that's a lot of running around. And, my mom, I feel like I hadn't been really spending a lot of time with her. So I was glad for that to, phase down to, and now it's summer. So I think some of those are not restarting right away. But now it seems like God is opening a different door, which is also one of my heartbeats, and that is to encourage and help the pastors' wives in our state. I guess because of my husband's position as the state rep, then I feel kind of what do you call that? It's not a soapbox, a reason to reach out to them. I have a place or of influence or whatever that I feel like I could reach out to them. And I think coming from Japan, where I noticed the other missionary wives, they're all very separated and there's not a lot of Christian fellowship. So I see a lot of similarities between the missionaries' wives in Japan and the pastors' wives here. And so I've kind of started reaching out to them, getting to know them, asking some questions on a written questionnaire, and then seeing what do they feel like their needs are. And out of that, we just had our first online book discussion. We have a book on pastors' wives, and just taking 2 chapters and just say, hey, let's talk about it. The same kind of deal that I've been doing with these other ladies. And I felt like it was a really wonderful space. I think 6 of us were together on our first one. And just to be able to have a space to be real and to share our burdens, our challenges, and for the older ones who have been in ministry longer to share with the younger, newer ones, say, hey, what do you do about this? Or how did you work through that challenge? And I think that's really valuable. And I was just really excited to be able to help facilitate that. Mm-hmm. So I don't know how you look at women's ministry or how you might be involved in that in the future. But being a woman, that's probably a good place for you to look out into. Have you had any women's experience? And maybe this is getting into our next half of the show, but...
I would say probably not very much. The church that I went to while I was at Faith, they had women's things, but they also had a college ministry. So I was mostly involved with that. But I did go to the women's Bible study on Wednesday nights a couple times when I was helping out with Kids for Truth, and kind of saw like how they did it. I think it's something that, like, as I think about potentially going back to Japan full time in the future, something to think about trying to set up in a church, maybe getting women together and just studying the word, and because that's something that I didn't really see when I was there. Like they have sometimes something on Wednesday nights, but it's not like just the women get together and talk through like a Bible study or through a book or anything like that. And I think that in Japan, someplace that's as spiritually dry as it is, I think that would be really beneficial.
Mm-hmm. And even if you don't have any books, because the resources are scarce, just to even take what you learned in a Sunday morning service or something and say, how does this work out in our lives? And just say, what did you hear or what did you think about that? Mm-hmm. Well, before we get into your next step in ministry, we need to take a little break here, and we will be back in just a few minutes. Okay, welcome back. Now, we have Chloe here, my daughter, and she's just finished up some more college, and I've asked her today to just tell about some of the things that she's been learning and how she's changed and stuff since she's left Japan. So just over 2 years ago, or maybe around 2 years ago, you left Japan following our furlough, and then we moved away out of our house and stuff. So I was just wondering if you could give a little overview of what happened since you left Japan in 2023.
Yeah, so life has been absolutely crazy since then. I feel like I grew up it was very slow, just because we were like mostly doing homeschool. So I just was in my house all the time. I was just studying, and then we'd go out and do things. But then we'd always come back and it would just be very chill. And then I just feel like once I've gotten here, everything has been just crazy all the time. So I got back in 2023 and I think right away jumped into my first tour in the States. So I went around to churches and was doing concerts and just figuring out how to live in America. I remember, I think I've mentioned it on this podcast before, but like I was terrified to go into stores. I didn't want to go into gas stations. I didn't like Walmart. It was just a huge culture shock for me. But then because I was traveling around so much, I mean, you really can't avoid the gas station when you're driving all summer. So kind of pretty quickly got over my fear of anything American and was just like, oh, well, I can do this. And then got into faith, started studying there, and that's a whole different transition because growing up homeschooled, you're the only one in your class. And there's not as much distractions in homeschool as there are in an actual college. So kind of learning, okay, this is how you sit through a lecture, and you have multiple lectures in a row, and if you happen to have 4 classes, and the way that Faith structures their classes is they do them all from 7 in the morning until a little after noon, and there's no classes anytime past that. So if you have like 4 classes in one day, you'll be doing them back to back, pretty much. And so not being able to take a break, kind of adjusting to that, adjusting to living with roommates that I've never met before in my life, and just trying to figure out all the relationships with cultural differences, because my only friends previously had mostly been other MKs in Japan. So we both came from the same cultural background. And
MK stands for missionary kid, just in case you don't know that. Okay.
So having most of my friends be MKs, to all of a sudden there's a bunch of Americans, and well, how do I relate to Americans? I have to figure that out. So I don't know, there's just like a lot of learning how to live in a new country, and then also learning how to study in a completely different environment. I'm not sure if that really answered the question, but
okay. So then you went to college. Now, you've just finished your second year here. You had done some earlier online in Japan, but
yes.
So now you've completed 2 years at Faith Baptist Bible College. And what would you say was like a main takeaway from your time at college?
Well, I think the first main takeaway, and this is not just for college, but it's really important to get involved with a church. And I don't know that I realized that when I was growing up in Japan, because I was always involved with the church, but maybe not in the same way that I was at college. Because in Japan, I was just like, oh, you just go to church on Sundays. This is just what we do. This is my parents' thing, and I'm here, and I want to be here, but like, I don't know, it's not that big, not that much of a big deal. And then going somewhere new and then trying to get just acclimated to a new place, the church was really what grounded me and like created that community that I really needed right away. Getting involved with people who cared about me and whose relationships, like we had them based on the gospel and on what God was doing. And so it was, even though Faith is a Bible college, it just was different. Church is a different thing than Bible college, even if everyone's a Christian. And I just think that was really important for me to get, Faith pushes you to get involved in a church right away. And I'm very grateful because it really pushed me to go look for one, to get involved, and then to start looking for places that I could be serving in the church. And through that was able to get involved with some different music ministries, and just provides a place to build relationships at maybe a deeper level than you could otherwise.
So how did they minister to you? I mean, you're a woman, so speaking of women's ministry, I know it wasn't just only women, but what was it that they did to help draw you in? What made you feel that community?
Well, I think there's a lot of different women that really made me feel very comfortable. One of them she's the pastor's mother, but she right away was looking for areas. She's like, hey, would you come help me in this ministry? I really I need your help, and I'd love to get you involved. So she's the first one who really got me like hooked up with the church serving side. There were also several of the college students that the first time that I ever walked into the college group that just came right up to me and introduced themselves and introduced me to all the other people and were just like, hey, join us. And they weren't cliquey or anything like that. They were just like, here, come. We're just hanging out. We're all friends. Now you can be one of them. And I also had one of the pastor's wives at the church was also very welcoming. And I'd met her before a little bit, but she's just very including. She includes everybody. She's like, here, I know you have this skill. I think you could help out here. And so she really quickly found a place where I could serve alongside her.
Yeah, that's a wonderful example, because sometimes we look at the young people in our churches and we'd like to include them, or we'd like to see them more involved, but we don't always know how do we do that. So I love how they just said, hey, I could see you helping with me. I mean, that's even a nicer way. It's not just go do that, but hey, why don't you join me? I could use your help. And then you feel needed and included, and then that can open up all kinds of opportunities. Right.
And all of the people that I mentioned, like, they invited me to serve with them, but they also spent time with me. It's like with the pastor's wife, she would just spend time talking because we were helping with music for Kids for Truth. So they have this like 30-minute section where we do songs and there's like a short message and then the kids go off and then we just had to pack up. And so while we were doing that, we would just talk. And she would just kind of share what's going on in her life and ask about what's going on in our lives, and was just very interested and just made me feel like, oh, this is just someone I can, relate to and someone that I can have good conversations with.
It does seem like these women in your life used what your father likes to use, that intentionality. They intentionally were including you and looking at you and saying, how can we bring you in?
Right.
And that's wonderful. And I hope that you can take those lessons as you move on into the future and do that, serve other people that way, the women in your life. Speaking of your future, you have a new venture coming up. Would you like to share about that?
Yeah, so I am spending the next 2 months, hopefully, going around to churches and raising support to go to Japan for a year. As a short-term missions trip, I guess. It feels really long to call it a missions trip, but I'll be leaving in August, hopefully, Lord willing, and spend about 5 months in the area of Japan where I grew up, get back involved with the churches that I was involved with, hopefully start building some new relationships, pick up some relationships that I had previously, if they still live around that area, I don't know. It's really hard to keep in contact with certain people, but just do that, and the second 6 months or so, I'll be in Tokyo area with a missionary family up there, and just kind of hoping to learn and grow with them. And the whole purpose for this trip is because I've always wanted to go back to Japan. But it's really difficult to tell if I want to go back to Japan because it's my home and I just want to go home, or if it's because God has actually called me into the ministry in Japan. And truthfully, I have no idea what the answer to that question is, because I could go there and start doing ministry and go, oh I can't do this, or this is not what I was expecting. Like, my parents are missionaries, but this is not how I can see myself in the future. Mm-hmm. Or I could go and be like, this is exactly what I want to do with the rest of my life, and I really don't know which way it's going to go. Mm-hmm. And I really feel like if I don't go and throw myself into the ministry, then I won't know, because I just feel like I need that little shove to go, is this a yes or is this a no? Mm-hmm. And I mean, obviously, I want to go back to Japan. I love the people. I love the culture. I love the scenery. I love the food. Like, I love everything about it. Well, not everything. There are some things that are, less than ideal. But I just really think I need to go back thinking of myself as I need to do ministry here. And then see if this is really where I feel called to spend the next however long that God leads me.
Mm-hmm. So that brings up a few questions. I mean, first, I'm kind of interested in what is it that you don't like about Japan?
Just really, I mean, anything with paperwork in Japan is going to take about 10 times longer than it really needs to, and that just bothers me.
Okay. So yes, there are a few things that are less than ideal. I guess another question that I'm sure you will run into if you haven't already is, like, you're still single, and how does that play into, or how do you feel about that as you look into ministry and Japan? And
yeah, I mean, I think being single, it'll be really important for me to find a community that I can lean on, that I can go to when I'm in need of help. Because I think if you try to go it alone, you're not going to get very far. So I do have to think about that. Whereas I think if you're a couple, it's a little bit easier, particularly right away, to just lean on each other. So I won't have that. And this will be my first time as well being in Japan by myself, without my family there. I had one really close friend who moved away, so she won't be in that area anymore. So kind of figuring out how to navigate God being my only constant source of comfort rather than just leaning on my family or my really close friends. And then building that Christian community that I can go to as well. Yeah, I don't really know how that's going to play out. I mean, it's something I've thought about, but it will be what it will be.
So how do you think you will find this community?
Well, I'm hoping the church. I guess it'll be different because I'm in two different areas. So for when I'm in the area that I grew up, I do have some friends roughly in that area. So it might just be a matter of, making sure that I'm calling people a little bit more frequently than I would if I had people that I was living with, or making sure I have somebody that can keep me accountable. Somebody that maybe I'm doing a Bible study with, someone that's kind of on the same spiritual level as me. So not someone that I'm trying to help necessarily, but somewhere where we can have the iron sharpening iron type of relationship. So whether that's within the church or whether that's someone even a little bit farther away, it is harder to find people in Japan that maybe could fill that exact need, that live really close. But I do have an NMK friend in Japan who I might be able to begin that sort of relationship with. We're already friends, but we've never quite gone the extra step and gone, hey, let's do a Bible study, or hey, let's meet once every other week or once a month just for accountability, share what we're learning.
And nowadays you can even do that online.
Right.
Since I know there's a distance involved there.
Right.
Yeah, that's really good. I know having a Bible study even, or just a time to get together and share prayer requests with another Christian woman has been really helpful to me too.
Right.
Even though at the moment, or when I began, I felt like, oh, I don't really need this. But over time, you realize, oh, I really do need this.
Yeah.
And it's been a real blessing.
Right.
So as you've been here in America for 2 years and you're going back to home. I mean, do you feel like you're more American or Japanese, or
I
how
think
do you view yourself, I guess?
Yeah, that's been getting muddier and muddier the longer I spend in America, because I came here and just felt very foreign right away. It's like, I don't know how anything works. I have no clue how to get gas. I don't know, how to use a credit card because I'd only ever used cash. And some of those credit card machines, like at stores, like you have to tap, you have to slide, or I don't know, they're sometimes confusing to me. Just all these little things. And then the culture differences with people just coming up and hugging me all the time. I wasn't used to that. I'm like, when do you handshake and when do you not handshake? I'd rather just bow. Can we just bow? It's like all this stuff kind of added up together and made me very uncomfortable for my first year, probably. Maybe a little less than a year once I started making friends and going, oh, maybe I can do this. But so I kind of had to get through all of that. And then once I got past that, then I was like, well, now I know all the rules. I know what people are expecting. I know how to do all the things. And now I can live here comfortably, but I still really want to go back to Japan. Mm-hmm. And then particularly this past year, I've made more deeper relationships with different people. I've started to go, oh, actually America isn't so bad, and started to get deeper connections with my church. And I'm like, well, maybe I am just American and not as Japanese as I thought I was. But I feel like that just might be that God allows us to adjust and adapt to whatever circumstances and situations that we're in. Mm-hmm. So he's allowed me to be very comfortable here, and comfortable in some ways that I will never feel in Japan, because here I look like I fit in. Mm-hmm. And people don't look at me strange. I'm not ever the only white person in the room. And, America is made for Americans. And so it's just very easy for me to live here.
Right.
But I guess right now I would say I feel more American just because I've spent 2 years here. And I know 2 years in comparison to the 20 that I spent in Japan doesn't seem like that much, but I've spent some of my formative years here, like leaving the family, living on my own for the first time, just going through a lot of different experiences and learning more about myself and how I need to handle things and how not to handle things. And so I think going back to Japan will be more difficult than it would have been a year ago, just because I don't need it as badly as I did before.
Which is maybe a healthier way to go back, don't you think?
Maybe. Yeah, I definitely would say, like, last year when I went on the missions trip, I took 6 students from Faith with me, and we went on a 2-week missions trip to Japan. And at that time, I wanted to go back to Japan so badly, and I just craved it. And so going back was really good, and leaving was really hard. And right now, I don't feel that desperation to get back to Japan. I want to go back, and I'm excited to go back, but I feel more like right now, if God called me to stay in the States, I would be okay with that. And I would never have been okay with that a year ago.
So that's a lot of life change, I feel like, and just perspective and attitude and maybe spiritual growth amongst that too. It's interesting to hear you say that, because when I went to Japan the first time, everything was foreign. And after 4 years, I felt like I just have to get out of here. And I went back to America. I was like, oh, this is so wonderful. I feel like I'm at home. But then when I went back to Japan, I was like, oh, okay, this isn't so bad anymore. And it feels more like a bit like home.
Yeah.
But it's kind of the opposite, for you.
Right. Yeah. And I think for the first time in my life, both countries are neutral. Because I've actually been in the States long enough to form an opinion instead of just being in Japan and going, oh, I don't want to go to America.
So as you anticipate going for this year, you have mentioned to me on another occasion that you might expect some reverse culture shock. What do you think might be hitting you differently as you go there to live on your own this time?
I think some of the cultural differences, like the way that people relate to each other, Americans in general are a lot more open. So I can meet, particularly a girl, I'll meet a girl at college and we only have to have like maybe 1 or 2 conversations before we feel like I can share with you about deeper things and we can have deeper conversations. Whereas I feel like in Japan, a lot of times it takes a lot longer to build that level of trust where you can actually have deep conversations and good conversations. It definitely happens a lot quicker here because you don't have as many walls that you put up. So I think that will be difficult for me going back to a country where everyone's kind of hiding behind this mask and saying, no, I'm fine. I like you fine. But they never really reach past that to say, how are you? And if I ask them how they are, they won't necessarily answer me honestly. So that I think will take some getting used to.
So I know while you were in Iowa, you found a Japanese woman that you were reaching out to. Did you feel like that relationship was like a typical Japanese relationship? Like, was she more open because she was living in America, or was she more Japanese?
I mean, I don't like to like just stereotype all Japanese because there are definitely Japanese women that will, within a few conversations, absolutely talk to you about certain things more deeply. And so I'm not sure if that's just kind of who she is personality-wise, or I think she was in America for, I think, 1 or 2 years before I met her. So she has been affected by that, I'm sure. But she was very easy to talk to, and we had some really good conversations. But it did take a little bit longer, maybe. But still, for sure, way more open than a lot of the Japanese women that I've talked to.
So as you're looking ahead to going to Japan, what preparations do you have to do for returning to Japan? Do you have anything?
I mean, just prayer, I suppose. Like, are you talking spiritually or like physically or
anything? Like, I know your room is a huge disaster at the moment.
Well, yes, I have to go through all my stuff here and figure out what things I just won't need anymore, what things I need to take with me to Japan, what things I'll use while I'm here but then get rid of before I go to Japan, what things, hopefully few things that I'll leave here for when I come back. You know, how many clothes am I going to leave here? How many am I going to take? What am I going to need there? I'm not really sure. It's a year, so it's a really long time to pack for. I do have some stuff there, but I cannot for the life of me remember what. And so, like, figuring out that is a little bit stressful, and I'm, like, making tiny decisions a lot every day, deciding, I don't need this. I do need this. It's just exhausting. And then still kind of trying to figure out some of the logistics of being in Japan. Like, we recently, Dad and I talked and we were like, well, I'm not going to need Wi-Fi. That's just going to be an extra expense. It's already, because I'm going with ABWE, they're adding certain expenses that I didn't necessarily expect. And so I'm just not going to get Wi-Fi, and I'll just go to the library if I need it. Other things, working out, do I need a vehicle? I only really need one for about 5 months. Do I rent one? Do I buy one? Just think little things like that, trying to figure out. Yeah, I don't know.
So if you had prayer requests, how could we pray for you as you go, or as you're,
pray for my sanity. Just feel like every day there's like something new that, I didn't think about that, and I really should. And just going through all my stuff. But also, I guess, pray that just that the preparation obviously would go smoothly, but also that my heart would be right, that as I return to Japan, it really would be that I focus on God and what he's doing in Japan rather than me. And, well, this is my home, so obviously I can do whatever I want. I don't want that to be the focus. I want the focus to be on ministry and how I can serve. And I think it'll be a temptation just to go, quote unquote, home and just kind of, oh, I'm home. Yeah.
Right. So I guess to wrap this up, we've been talking about ministry to women. I mean, it can be very challenging and rewarding to serve the church and our Lord Jesus Christ. And it calls for the question, I mean, if you're a woman listening to this, how has God gifted you? And what women are in your church family? What are their next steps? And how could God use you to meet even one need? And do you even know what the needs are? If not, how can you get to know somebody to better find out what needs they might have? And I think it's good to watch other women in the church and see how they reach out and how they are finding needs. And really, any one of us can do this. And God has gifted each of us in unique ways. And we're not all going to look the same. We're going to do these things differently. But we are very grateful for you listening today. And if you enjoyed this show, you can listen to all the past shows wherever you listen to podcasts. Good place to start is at runwithhorses.net. And you can write comments to Norman at runwithhorses.net or leave a comment on the podcast Facebook page. Until next time, keep your eyes on Jesus and keep on running all the way to Japan.